free.
Hello and welcome to a nationalist and internationalist discussion. In today's discussion, these two sides are going to discuss current disagreements or misunderstandings to their different policies. So let's start with nationalists.
Okay, so our main posture here is that national identity and history are things that we choose to value a lot, as they prove to be pivotal to the integral structure of our nation state. It provides a sense of solidarity towards people, as these two factors include a feeling of belonging, citizenship, and national cohesion between citizens. And we think that it's very important for us to have that as an issue.
Okay, and us as internationalists, we believe that throughout life, change is inevitable. And throughout history, societies have changed voluntarily or involuntarily due to the natural progression of the human relationships, which end up preserving new ideas in already established societies. For this, we believe that change doesn't necessarily mean losing part of one's identity, but we believe that this change means that accepting change can prove that preserving culture and also being in contact with other cultures can be compatible. So we believe that having a strong international system can allow countries to strengthen themselves through one another.
Okay, these are great starting points. Let's continue with the first argument. Do you consider that sharing traditions and culture is something that results positively regarding a nation's growth and identity?
We believe that with the arrival of foreign ideologies, cultures, and traditions, the ones we built over centuries of history are at risk of disappearing. We have seen it happen on multiple occasions throughout history. For example, in every colonization we've witnessed throughout history, each nation sought for new territories, more resources, or just simply to expand their control and ideologies. This is a problem. Such as an expense, distinct native cultures have disappeared from the face of the planet, as the other ideologies were more influential in their new population or sometimes even forced into a society. We want to preserve our nation and its precious identity that we have fought for hundreds of years. We believe that if others arrive and share their ideas and cultures, they will change the things that makes every nation unique, to the point where no nation is unique.
Okay, I understand your concern, and I can see how you can argue that globalization can destroy traditions. But we, as internationalists, we believe that preserving culture and accepting change can happen at the exact same time. Culture can be protected without completely isolating ourselves from other nations and other societies. We can exchange our beliefs, our values, our traditions with the goal of keeping our population growing in both population and in cultural aspects. Now, this doesn't mean that accepting onto this idea and not holding on to your culture and your society means that your society is inferior to another's country's society. No, this means that we can acknowledge that each country has distinct characteristics that make them unique, and that they make you the person that you choose to be, but also they grant you different perspectives and they give you the ability to grow and take on different paths that your country more paths than your country already has.
Great, so if we can agree that change doesn't necessarily mean losing our identity, then we can move to the next important topic, regarding how much influence countries should have their own development. So, if change and culture can coexist, should countries face challenges together or separately?
Okay, as we previously mentioned, we strongly believe that cooperation becomes a virtue when countries recognize that they can do much more together than individually. However, this doesn't mean that international organizations or agreements should be trusted blindly. Cooperation still should have to be evaluated and see if they can both work together and aiming to agreement that everyone in the deal benefits the people represent. Remember that a community will on trust and support is the strongest.
Well,
We have a very strong belief that nobody really knows a country's struggles better than their own citizens. We consider that local people have a more reliable perspective on the country's needs, resources, capabilities, and even limitations. The implication of an external country means that we, as a collective force, will lose focus on original issues to be addressed, ending up with little to no progress at all, as we have seen in UN forums where it is harder to reach an agreement because there's various nations trying to reach a consensus simultaneously. However, we are aware that sometimes only one entity is not enough to carry out a task that requires great amounts of effort. That's why we are open to negotiating cooperation between countries without getting too involved in our internal affairs, as we believe that that is the government's responsibility to take action on our own internal affairs, while still being able to rely on others in dire times. Naturally, we will also cooperate too if one of our allies is in need.
Okay, that's great progress. We've seen the tension that international cooperation and national priorities can bring, and the solutions that we can apply. But if countries are becoming more and more connected and involved, how does that affect the way people see their own identity? Nationalists?
Okay, so for us, there is no more important thing than citizens that perceive themselves as proud members of our country. A population that bonds over their national identity is stronger and more able to overcome any obstacles together. On the other hand, we consider that a mixture of a lot of different cultures may end up in a great loss and deprecation of our own culture. As people discover more perspectives with values that oppose the national ones, it's going to become more difficult for them to agree on a common point or work together towards a goal. That's why our main idea is prohibiting the interaction between different worlds in order to preserve our country right as it is, beautiful and original.
You make a great point when you talk about the sense of belonging, because we also agree that having a national identity does create a sense of belonging. But we don't believe that our identity has to stop at our country's borders. A person can be proud of their own nationality while also recognizing similarities in other countries and other societies. And this process of recognizing can bond different people from other countries, as they can see that they have similarities and connections in places where they probably didn't even notice. Also, living in a world in the present day where communication, trade, technology, and travel connect societies more than ever, having a broader international identity doesn't delete our national identity. We believe that it allows us to recognize others' experiences, their problems, and their responsibilities, and finding things in common to which we can build stronger bonds.
So, it seems possible to have a national and international identity, but if those identities can coexist, then who should have the final say when saying important decisions that needs to be done?
Well, we believe that the countries that are involved in the situation should have the final say, as they are the ones who maintain order of the situation. And also, they should prioritize international concerns over their own. And what do I mean by this? I mean that there are situations where national decisions have consequences far beyond one's borders. And being in an international community, we are aiming for the best lifestyle possible for all of our citizens. So international conflicts, pandemics, or economic troubles are things that we must prioritize for the well-being of our citizens, as these are examples of problems that can cross borders. So we believe that cooperation amongst different countries is the best way to protect our own citizens.
So if we are talking about who has the final say on what we do, we as nationalists think that patriotism should be our top one priority when taking these decisions. That's why we, in order to, we and we believe that the sense of patriotism that lingers in a country's population and the ability to be able to trust the national government for managing interests and external relationships raises pride in our nation among everyone. A clear example that we have of these type of occasions occurring are, for example, in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Sorry, I can't speak English apparently. Where John F. Kennedy had a very high reputation after managing successfully, from the perspective of American citizens, the crisis that happened between the Soviet Union and the United States. We think that that pride that people has in their government is something that is as valuable as gold for us. So that's why we think that even when various countries are involved, national decisions and resolve must be our first priority. So we, as our nation, should prioritize our government and our needs over everything. We think that by surrendering our final say to the world, we lose our sovereignty, and our laws weaken to the point where they become meaningless inside of the world. We are aware that we can't be too invasive towards other nations with their own values. So we are up to negotiation about a way we can respect each other's boundaries, but at the same time, not appearing dependent on other nations from a citizen perspective.
Okay, so we have touched upon how a country should aim to help others, as it can
9 minutes left.
as it can prove to be useful to themselves, but they can help others if they can help themselves. So, with this in mind, how should loyalty to our own country influence our actions and priorities?
Thank you, moderator. So we believe that in a shared love, and a shared idea of having the duty of serving our country. Mostly because this is what ties our citizens together. When they become more likely to sacrifice themselves, it's not only heroic, but it's honorable and also reflects our values as a society. It also helps engage in civil life, meaning that it helps out other people. Nationalism stands by having shared love, and therefore a shared idea of serving it, and it ties people together. That's why we cannot wholeheartedly accept the needs of others, as it presents a risk of breaking this tradition within our own country. In the same way, our love and loyalty towards our country should always inspire every part of us, being the foe of our country's enemy and vice versa.
We agree that citizens do have the duty to love and serve their own country, but we see it in different light. We believe that belief and sensation can motivate people to contribute possibility to their communities and others. We can have a special connection to our nation while still recognizing that people from other countries deserve dignity and consideration. Each person can help out with something as small or big as this can be. The impact will turn to positive in the long run. It's important to remember, as humans, we have the opportunity to keep growing as a shared community, and that helping others, communities, and showing them the same duty and love that they show their own doesn't automatically weak their own country.
Both sides agree that loyalty to our own country can motivate people to contribute. But what happens with those that choose to extend themselves beyond their own borders? How could we approach the movement of people, ideas, and opportunity between countries?
Well, we believe that immigration and globalization can create important opportunities for the societies to grow and learn from another one. People who move between nations can bring new skills, ideas, perspectives, and cultural experiences, while globalization can allow nations to develop their nations more. We understand that this process needs to be managed with responsibility and in organized manner, according to each country's laws. However, we don't believe that interaction between societies threatens national identity.
While transnational identity appears unifying, we also believe that countries thrive when they live within a stable and coherent moral order. When external traditions and conflicting values are introduced, they disrupt the underlying rules that keep our society functioning. Consequently, it forces a change upon our way of life, and when locals try to defend their moral framework they have built for over thousands of generations, they are unfairly labeled as aggressive or even intolerant for protecting their legacy.
So we can see that international interaction can create opportunities, but it also raises concerns and challenges regarding how much control should a country maintain. So if we understand that relationship between countries isn't new and that our societies have been influencing each other for centuries, then how should we understand the history that connects us?
Well, while we agree that globalization does bring certain opportunities, it also introduces massive risk to our national security that we cannot just simply ignore. True security means having complete control over who enters our borders and how our resources are used. When immigration is unmanaged, it could potentially threaten local employment and make background tracking even more difficult, thus severely compromising public safety. On the other hand, when we rely entirely on global supply chains, we become overly dependent on foreign powers. It is important to clarify that we do not reject immigration, neither globalization. But a government must prioritize national security by keeping internal matters under control, so our country's foundation remains stable.
We agree and we recognize those concerns, but we believe that it's important to empathize with others' realities and their lifestyle. Migration, conflict, and cultural exchange have connected societies for centuries, and they are part of shared history that we all have in common. Recognizing our shared history allows us to comprehend that we all come from the same place, and that it doesn't mean that our experiences are less unique. Instead, it allows us to understand why societies are connected and why the actions of the country can sometimes be seen or affect in another. Learning from this shared history can help us perpetuate without giving up our own identity.
We've seen that our histories have connected societies, but those connections have also brought different beliefs and traditions into one another. If our values aren't always the same, then how should we respond to those differences?
Well, we as internationalists, we believe that understanding people with different values is essential if we want our countries and communities to coexist peacefully. Understanding another perspective doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything that they stand for or everything they believe in and abandon our own principles. It simply means that you are willing to listen to the other's perspective and recognize what other societies may think. We can protect our own values while respecting others and acknowledging them. In fact, we believe that understanding differences can help unnecessary conflicts and make international cooperation much easier.
We think that it's a valid perspective to have, and that listening to others can certainly be useful. However, we firmly believe a country must maintain a unified core of values to ensure social cohesion. When these core values are diluted, people naturally begin to feel threatened in their own homes. Ultimately, when deeply conflicting values are brought in by outsiders, it becomes a direct threat to our national survival.
Okay, both sides recognize that differences in values can create challenges, but they also agree that understanding those differences is important. The internationalists emphasize openness and dialogue, while nationalists emphasize protecting the shared values that hold our country together. So I guess something that we can take home with us is that perhaps the question isn't whether we choose one over the other, but how can we protect our identities while still being willing to understand and cooperate with those who are different. After hearing both perspectives, we can see that nationalism and internationalism may seem completely different positions, but they have many areas where they overlap. Both sides agree on that national identity and culture are important. Nationalists emphasize protecting the tradition, history, and values that they make a country unique, while internationalists argue that those identities can continue to exist even when societies interact and change. So preserving culture doesn't necessarily require isolation, and accepting challenge doesn't mean abandoning our own identity. We also found a common ground when discussing respect and different values, even when there are legitimate concerns about security, resources, and the fading of one's own culture and national identity. There is openness to learning, cooperating, and exchanging with other societies, as long as it's handled responsibly. Therefore, our consensus is that countries should be able to protect their sovereignty, culture, and national interests while remaining open to the international cooperation when it benefits their citizens and addresses shared problems. We don't have to choose between caring about our own country and caring about the wider world. We can preserve that makes our own nations unique while recognizing that in an increasingly connected world, cooperation and understanding are also necessary. The goal is to find a balance where their national identity and international cooperation can coexist. Thank you.